this is more of a summary of what we've covered in the first 5 training sessions. We've got a lot to cover today. First of all, I want to thank you for all of you being on those sessions. Many of you have been on the entire 6 sessions. So we'll start, and there's a lot of information we covered, as you probably already know, and some of you have made notes. The first thing I want to talk about is I want to talk about selling naming opportunities. You know, you people want to go in and sell naming opportunities, and I'm opposed to that. You sell the project first. You don't sell naming opportunities. I don't go in and say to someone, hey, John and Mary, if you give me $150,000, you give the organization $150,000, we'll name this room after you and your family. I don't approach it that way. The way I approach a naming opportunity is to sell the project, and then John and Mary, as a result of your gift, in recognition of your gift, I'd like to recommend to the board or to the head of school or to the president that this area be named in honor of you and your family. It's a little different approach than just saying, hey, you know, here, if you give us $150,000, we'll name this area after you. Let me talk to you too about naming opportunities. You don't name opportunities based on the square footage of an area. You name an opportunity, you put a dollar amount on a naming opportunity based on visibility, visibility. So, you know, smaller areas, as you walk into your organization, let's say there's a lobby area and it's not that large, but it has high visibility. It's worth more than an area in the back of your building or in the back of the organization that's twice or 3 times the size. So you sell the naming opportunity based on visibility, not on the size of the area. Let's talk about, you know, we talked about the solicitation proposal when I went over that. I'm not, again, everything I'm doing today is more of a review, not getting into a lot of detail. But our philosophy is you always take a solicitation proposal with you when you make a presentation, always. And so our solicitation proposals we have an outline of what we like to cover in our solicitation proposal. You know, we start with the cover letter. We have an introduction. We have a proposal about the project itself. We have a budget page, and we have an ask amount again. But what's important about the solicitation proposal, and our solicitation proposal will give you copies of any of those proposals. If you'd like a copy of it, we'll send you a copy of a solicitation proposal. And you can see that we built a solicitation proposal based on if someone only wants to read the cover letter, they'll know enough about the organization. They'll know what the ask amount is, because we always put that in the cover letter to make a decision. There are some individuals who want to know more. And those are the individuals that we cater to when we put the proposal together, because we want to make sure we don't leave anybody out. In other words, somebody may want to read the whole proposal, which is 10 or 12 pages in length, and that's fine. I don't take anybody for granted. So again, but the solicitation proposal is very important. I found that a lot of development officers today are not taking that next step. They're not taking a proposal with them. And I think that's a huge mistake. So you take a proposal with you, and we'll talk more about what you do with that proposal when you get into that solicitation with that individual or individual couple. But again, solicitation proposal to me is very, very important to your process, your solicitation process, as you're asking people to consider your gift. All right, so you always ask for a specific dollar amount in that proposal. We put that in that letter. You know, that's really important, because that's the first thing they look at and read. Let's talk about contact reports. Contact reports are what? They're something that's the objective of the meeting. You include that in the contact report. It's a bridge from one meeting to the next meeting. You include things in there that you would be comfortable having the donor or prospect read. Now let me make a point here. I remember the development officer went out, a VP for advancement. Wasn't necessarily a development officer. This was a VP for advancement. He went out and made a presentation to or had a meeting with a major prospect. And during the course of that meeting, this individual talked about his brother and negative things about his brother, and they didn't speak and whatever. He came back and put that in the contact report. Now, I was fortunate enough to get a copy of that contact report, and I read it and I couldn't believe it. And I went back and called the VP for advancement and said, you can't put this in the contact report. If you put this in the contact report and the press got a hold of it, it would be front page news. So you only put information in the contact report that you feel that the donor or prospect would be comfortable in reading that. And there are a lot of instances where husband and wives have divorced, and the wife has petitioned the school for the contact reports that maybe the husband gave. So again, there's a lot of information that are in there, but you want to make sure that it's information in there that would be comfortable for anyone to read. And you're going to put financial information in there, but make sure that that's general financial information. And you're going to put pets' names. You're going to put all those kind of things that maybe will remind you of what you need to do on the next visit you go to. So contact reports are very important. Contact reports are very important that you do it pretty quick after the meeting. The longer you wait after that meeting, then you're probably going to miss some things. And what I like to teach, and I've told you all before on this, I like as a development officer, you should go into a meeting and visually look at your surroundings and get back in the car after the meeting and write down all those things. So in other words, you're going in, and I've told this story before. I went in with a development officer. We go into this home. We came back out after the meeting, and we came up with 22 things that we noticed in that meeting. 22. Now, some of those may not be very important to you, but it certainly helps you create a contact report when you're looking at those 22 different items that we found. Like, for instance, we said, there was financial information on the coffee table. That was something we noticed. Again, development officers don't do that. They don't look at their surroundings. I'm trying to teach you to look at your surroundings when you go into a meeting and then get back in your car and write those down. You're not going into the meeting with a pad and pencil and writing them down as you observe them, but observe all your surroundings and write those down when you get back into the meeting and back into your car. And I don't care what it is. You walk in through the garage and there's a car sitting there. Write down the name of that car. You may think some of these are small points, but I'm telling you, it makes a huge difference when you're trying to create the contact report and trying to create information for your next meeting. Okay, now we've talked about this before too. Mistakes matter, but you learn from mistakes. That's the number one fear that most development officers have. They're afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how you learn. As I said, that's the only way you're going to learn is to make those mistakes. I tell development officers, new development officers especially, you have 1 week. If you're hired on Monday, you have 1 week to stay in the office, learn as much as you can about the organization. And week number 2, you're out there seeing prospects and visiting with people. And yeah, you may make some mistakes because you don't know everything, but that's okay. That's all right to make mistakes. You're going to learn from that. Before you can learn from a mistake, you have to recognize that you made a mistake. A lot of times you may not recognize that. I've told the story. I'll tell it to you again. I remember going on a solicitation with a lady. I remember exactly where it was. I remember how it happened. This was 20 years ago or 25 years ago. And we go in to make a solicitation, development officer, myself. And so we get into our 5-step approach. And when we get to the ask, I asked this gentleman for $10,000, repayable in equal amounts over a 3-year period of time. When we got back in the car, the development officer said to me, Jerry, the proposal that we presented to him, we asked for $15,000, not 10. I said, oh golly, I didn't realize that was a $15,000 request, not a $10,000. And so I said, I learned a lesson. I made that mistake, and I recognize that mistake. And so now I never go into a solicitation now without reading that proposal, without reading that cover letter again, even though I may know that that's what the number is. I'm going to read that to make sure that what I asked for is the same number that's in that proposal. So again, you can make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. You just learn from those mistakes. So I used to do this. I used to get in the car after a meeting and I'd ask myself, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? I used to keep a little business journal, and I would write down some of the things. And I knew that I did things wrong, and I think I did some things right. but I would write them down. I was always trying to be better. And that's the secret of your success, is always trying to figure out how I can do this better, because you're going to make mistakes and you've got to learn from those. Even maybe they're not major mistakes. Maybe it's what you said. Maybe it's how you approach the project or you approach the subject. Again, you can learn from that. And maybe the prospect didn't realize that you made a mistake, but you did. So again, be the first to admit a mistake. Everybody loves people who take ownership. I was reading a book last night about someone who had made a mistake, and it was a huge mistake, and it was a financial mistake, and it cost the company a large sum of money. And so the gentleman went to the boss and said, "Look, I made that mistake, and I know we lost a lot of money." And the CEO said, "Thank you for coming and telling me that you made a mistake. If you hadn't told me and we found about it, we would have terminated you on the spot. But since you were honest enough to come and own up to a mistake, we'd love to have you to continue with our organization and think you can be an asset." Again, people love people who take ownership in a mistake. I made a mistake. I'm sorry, I made a mistake, but I'm going to learn from that mistake. Okay, mistakes often happen when you shoot from the hip. You got to plan and plan again, and shooting from the hip is not being prepared. And that's a certain way of sink the ship. All right, again, we talked about in one of our sessions, we talked about there's no shortage of money, only a shortage of big, bold, exciting ideas. Remember what I said? That's part of your job. Your job is to go in and create that excitement, create that interest. And you're going to go in and see people, and they're going to have a large capability. A lot of them will, and so you've got to get them interested. And people will give more when you are able to attach their thinking to a big, bold, exciting idea, a big, bold, exciting project. Because you know what? People want to make an impact. That's a key word. Remember, we talked about that before. That's a key word. Make an impact. So again, we talked about 2022 contributions were $499 billion. Now, the new numbers will not come out for 2023 until this month in June, probably the latter part of June, we'll get our new numbers. The point I want to make to you every time I show this chart is that 64%, anyway, I've been showing this chart for years. And so the number has gone from 64% to 75% comes from living individuals. That's the largest source of where your contributions will come from. Again, a lot of people new in this business want to go to corporate America. They say that's where we need to go get the money. Well, look, corporate America only gives about 6% of that $499 billion. If you're working just with corporations, you're working with a very small part of the pie. And so, yeah, I'm not saying that you don't take corporations out of your out of everything that you're doing, but you certainly want to include your major solicitation should be on living individuals. Remember that bequests are about 9%, and foundations are about 10%. Remember we talked about foundations? Foundations are difficult. There are 43,000 foundations in this country. And so every $1 they give away, there are 100 people out there in line to get that foundation gift. If you're going to solicit foundations, first of all, you better know who's on the board. Board members can influence the gifts. And what you're doing with foundations is you're only presenting that foundation request to the CEO. Now, the CEO of the foundation will be the one who he or she is going to have to present that to the full foundation board. I've always felt like I can do a much better job of presenting my proposal to that board than the CEO of the foundation, but I never get that opportunity. So again, if you know a foundation board member, you can talk to that individual. A lot of times the way foundations are set up is foundation board members will have influence over certain gifts, or maybe they'll have an opportunity to prioritize a gift, and that helps you if you get to them and say, "Look, here's my proposal we're presenting, and maybe this person can help you move your proposals up in the stack." Okay. So here's another thing you look at. I look at a couple of things. One, religion is the largest organization in terms of receiving funds from the $499 billion. They get about 27%. 27%. Human services gets about 14%. Now, human services has overtaken education. Education used to be number 2. Education was number 2 for years and years. This is the first year in 2022 that I've seen human services is number 2 and education is number 3. Again, you can look at what the organization you fit into this chart, and you can see the percentage of that $499 billion that was given away that you can certainly go after. Again, there's a lot of money out there, and you can see where people give their money from that chart. All right, remember we did a presentation on the myths of fundraising, and I'm not going to talk about these, but I just wanted to talk about one thing. A myth is donors are drawn to organizations in need. That's false. Or they are not drawn to organizations in need. They don't give to organizations in need. People who have money, if you say to someone, if you don't give us some money, we're going to have to close the door. And they would say, close the door. Remember what I said before? They want to give to big, bold, exciting ideas, big, bold, exciting projects. And they're not given to organizations that are on the downturn. They're given to organizations that are on the upturn. And so you don't talk about need. Remember, we mentioned this a number of times in our first 5 presentations. You talk about opportunities, not needs. People don't give to needs. They give to opportunities. So, and substitute that word opportunity for need every time. Don't talk about needs. Okay, then we talked about body language. We spent some time talking about body language and learning to read body language. I think that's really important for you when you go in. Remember, we talked about too, that you're in there and you listen 80% of the time and talk 20% of the time. A lot of people don't do that. Remember, we talked about that when you're in there talking to an individual and they're behind their desk, and you're sitting in front of their desk, that tends to be a little harder meeting because there's a barrier between you and the prospect. If the prospect, you walk in and the prospective donor stands up and says, can we sit over here in this couch area? There's an open couch area. You'd say, of course. That's a much better meeting because there's no barrier between you and that prospect. You also learn to read, their body language in terms of, where they put their hands or if they cross their arms. That's a pretty negative body language about what you're saying. One of the things that I've learned over the years is when people change positions in their chair, prospect changes positions. By that, I mean, I'm sitting in my chair and I lean forward. That's a sign the meeting is over. If I'm leaning forward and listening to you, which is a positive sign, but I'm leaning forward and I move back into my chair, that's a sign the meeting is over. Those two signs indicate that it's time for you to start packing up. It's time for you to start closing your part of the meeting and end the meeting. That's when the meeting is over. So you need to learn about body language, and that's important to your process that you go through when you're talking to people. All right, all meetings should have an objective. All meetings should have an objective. Write that down. Does that mean that you're going to accomplish your objective? If I'm fortunate enough to go with you someday on a solicitation, and I go in and we get in the car and we're going to the meeting, first thing I'm going to ask you is, what's our objective? What are we trying to accomplish today? Now, we came up with this TAPP, TAP. This is in preliminary meetings or even solicitation, but in preliminary meetings, this is what your objective should be. TAP, T-A, so I remember it with TAP. Remember the right time, the right amount, the right project, the right person. So this is my objective. I'm trying to determine the right time to come back and make the presentation. Or is it the right time to even present a proposal to this individual? What's the right amount? How do you determine the right amount? You determine the right amount by, looking at that individual and talking about, the gifts that you received in the campaign. We've had 10 gifts over $50,000. We've had 20 gifts over 25. I like to mention that because I'm looking, again, I'm reading body language. I'm reading their reaction to that amount. When I go in, remember this, when I go in on a preliminary meeting, I know the dollar amount I want to ask that individual at a later meeting. So let's say I'm going in to see John and Mary Smith, and after my research, I've determined that I'm going to ask John and Mary Smith for $25,000. So one of my objectives when I go into that meeting is to verify in my mind that's the right dollar amount. That's the right dollar amount. So I go in there and, I may come out of the meeting and say, based on what I've heard and based on what I've seen, this individual could do $50,000. Or maybe based on what they told me, I don't think they could do 25,000. Also, I'm going to talk about the project. And so if I've got 3 projects or 4 projects, I'm going to talk about it, but don't give them the elevator speech. Don't give them the speech where you're going to take 20 minutes to talk about each one of those projects or talk about all your projects. Make it quick, and then if you're looking at someone and trying to say, if they'd say to you, well, I really like that other project number 2 you mentioned, or whatever that project is. Most people don't say that. What you have to say is, based on the projects I just listed to you, if you're so inclined to make a gift, which project would you be inclined to maybe give to? Right, I'm trying to ask some questions and I'm trying to determine which of the projects they might give to. Then I want to determine the right person. And in most instances, the right person that you want to take with you on a solicitation is the decision maker. Who is the decision maker in your organization? Maybe the head of school, it may be the president. I don't know who it is. Maybe the athletic director. I'm not sure. But that's the person you want to take when you take it on a solicitation. So anyway, remember that TAP, T-A-P-P. All right, let's talk about familiar faults found in fundraisers. I did a session on this, and there were about 10 familiar faults found in fundraisers, and there were a number of those. I'm not going to go over those, but one of the ones was fundraisers don't ask enough questions during preliminary and solicitation meetings. They go into meetings and they sit there, and remember, they follow that 80-20 rule. They're listening 80% of the time, talking 20% of the time. But they sit there and they don't ask questions. I think that's a great mistake. That's a major mistake, that you need to ask questions. So what happens is development officers will go in, sit there, never ask questions, come back and get in their car. And if they write any notes down, they're going to make some assumptions. They assume this is what they heard, and they assume this is what the person wants to do. And sometimes their assumptions are right. Sometimes their assumptions are wrong. I'm saying to you, ask questions. You're in a meeting and someone says something. Can you clarify that for me? Can you tell me what you mean by that? Ask the questions. It's okay to ask questions. You'll get the prospect more engaged in what you're talking about anyway. So fundraisers, one of the familiar faults they don't ask enough questions. All right, stewardship is not an option. Remember, we talked about stewardship. Talked about a lot about stewardship. Stewardship is overlooked. We've talked about it for years and years, and we talked about you've got to do stewardship. If you want to get a gift from this person again, this person makes a gift to you, and you want that person to give again, you've got to do stewardship. What is stewardship? Building a relationship, right, with an individual. So stewardship is not an option. It's something that you've got to do, and most people don't do it. And so we talk about, that there's a minimum of 5 touches with donors per year. A minimum of 5 touches per year. Most development officers don't do that. They don't come close to doing that. They don't have an organized way of doing that. I can tell you that I've been working on this, and we've been thinking about it here at the Smith Group, and we're creating a stewardship automation program. A stewardship automation program. We're not in the final of this right now, but we're close. And if you want this to be put in your system, it will automatically tell you when those touches come up and what those touches are. Now we've had those 5 touches forever, and you know what they are: the letters, calls, the Thanksgiving card, whatever. But you can come up with your own touches. But this way will remind you of when you need to do those touches over a 12-month period of time. I'm telling you, it's important. You have to touch people. You have to build those relationships if you want them to give again. Remember, the basic principle says a person who makes the first gift to your organization is typically their smallest gift. If you do stewardship, build relationships, the next gift is larger. So remember that stewardship automation program. Rule of 3. What is a rule of 3? Most of you are working with organizations that have a large database. Some of you have thousands of names on your database. And so years ago, we created the rule of 3. Rule of 3 is what? You got to make a solicitation on the 3rd visit. On the 3rd visit, you make a solicitation. Now, why do I say that? Because I found out over the years, my experience has been development officers are great. They're great at stewardship. I'm not stewardship, but cultivation. They're great at cultivation. They want to cultivate, and then you know what they want to do? They want to cultivate some more. So there's got to be a point where you have to make a solicitation. Now, remember this, we said that, you know, the more preliminary meetings you have prior to making the ask, the more success you have of raising a major gift. But I'm going against that principle here when I say a rule of three. Now, the exception to that rule of three is if there's someone out there that has a capability of a seven-figure gift, or even maybe a high mid six-figure gift, then I probably would go beyond that rule of three in terms of my cultivation meetings and trying to determine the right ask amount. But normally you wouldn't do that. Normally you're working at lower levels, and you should solicit on the third visit whether you're ready or not. I mean, it's so important that you move on. That's your job. Your job is to make an ask. And if you're not doing that, if you're cultivating, you know, then you certainly won't be moving. Oh, so remember the rule of three. The rule of three says you make a solicitation on the third visit or sooner. I'm gonna tell you, I did a campaign years ago when I was at Auburn, and we made solicitations on the first visit. On the very first visit, we made solicitation. We had 157 gifts of $50,000 or more. A lot of those people had never given to Auburn. I go in and make a solicitation on the very first visit, and we solicited and a lot of gifts, and we created a lot of gifts, and we certainly didn't use that information to begin cultivating and building relationships with people. So the rule of three is important. It's very important. But I'm saying that's the end. You got to make a solicitation on the third visit. Okay, now let's talk about the 5 steps of the solicitation. I talked about this. I went over this in detail. As a matter of fact, I sent you my confidence cards. Hopefully you all have my confidence cards. If you don't have them, then, you know, shame on you. But you ought to memorize those confidence cards. I'm telling you, have a plan. And you may not like what I say in my 5 steps. Come up with your own plan. But listen, don't go into a solicitation and not be saying the same things over and over and over and over again. So remember, what are my 5 steps? Number 1 is small talk, right? You go into a presentation. I've got my proposal. Remember, we talked about that earlier today. I've got my proposal. What do I do with my proposal that I'm walking in with? I hold on to it, right? I never put it down on the table, on the conference table, or on the coffee table, because if I do, what happens? The prospect picks it up, reads it, opens it up, starts reading it, and when you lose eye contact, it's all over. So I hold on to the proposal. What is small talk? Small talk is, you know, you talk about the weather, you talk about sports, but also small talk is something that you have researched. You've done a bio on this individual. You know a little bit about him or that couple. Especially in a school, you know that their children's names, you know what grades they're in, and that's part of small talk. How's John and Mary doing? Oh, John's in 2nd grade. I know Mary's in the 5th grade. How are they doing? That is small talk. Step number 2 is purpose of the visit. Purpose of the visit. I got my proposal, and I say something really important in this step number 2. I say to the prospect, let me tell you why we're here. And one of the things I do in step number 2, before I do that, if we've done a feasibility study, I'm going to talk about the results of the feasibility study. John and Mary, thank you for being part of the feasibility study. We had great results. It gave the information, it gave the organization tremendous information to make a decision to move forward in the campaign. And so thank you for doing that. Then I list about 3 or 4 what came out of the feasibility study. 98% believe in the mission of the organization. I list those. Then I say, John and Mary, I've got a proposal that I want to leave with you. I want you to read it, review it, and consider it. Now, that's a really important statement. John and Mary, I've got a proposal I want to leave with you. What I'm saying to that prospect is, I'm not expecting a decision today. I'm not expecting a decision today. So it's really important that you know why I say that? Because it takes pressure off of that individual couple. It takes pressure off of them. I didn't always do this. You know what happened? I found out that when I got this proposal and they know I'm about to present a proposal to them, and we get to step number 3, they're not listening. They're not listening to step number 3. You know what they're thinking about? This guy's going to ask me for money. I don't know what we're going to tell him. So I take that off of them on step number 2. I got a proposal I want to leave with you. I want you to read it, review it, and pray about it. Step number 3 is telling the story. That's the individual that goes with you to tell the story. That's the head of school. That's the president. That's the athletic director, whomever it is. You're taking that person to tell the story. Now, I don't script that person, right? I don't script them. I don't say, here's a script, memorize the script. But sometimes I have to do bullet points. I have to give that individual a few bullet points that I want you to cover. Now, again, I also like to do storyboards. I found that storyboards are really, really effective. If you're building a building, you got big storyboards that you show a copy of, you show the building, you show the floor plan, and that is what that person in telling the story, it makes it a lot easier for them to tell the story if they're using storyboards to do that. But to tell the story is very important. And I've said this before. Remember, I said it before. There are two important points that you have to do when you're telling the story. You have to be enthusiastic and you have to be passionate. Enthusiastic and passionate. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. Let me say that again to you. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. If you're enthusiastic and you're passionate about it and telling the story, people are going to be more inclined to buy into your story, buy into your ask, and make a gift. So you got to be passionate, you got to be enthusiastic. Okay, step number 4 is making the ask. Now, I usually go back and I talk about the campaign itself or how much money that we had a goal, and we raised X number of dollars towards that goal. I always like to mention the boards are 100%, our staff is 100% in contributions. And then I'll talk about, I've got it again, as I mentioned earlier, I've got a proposal I want to leave with you. I want you to review and consider this. What I'd like to ask you and your family to consider is a gift of $50,000, payable equal amounts of $10,000 per year over the next 5 years in support of the campaign. Then I stop and I wait for an answer. I wait for an answer. Now, here's what most of our officers do. Say, John and Mary, I've got a proposal to leave with you. I want you to get a gift of $50,000, payable amounts of $10,000 per year over the next 5 years in support of the campaign. If you can't do 50 million, do 25. If you can't do 25 million, do 10 or 15 or whatever. You make the ask and you wait for an answer. That is the silent phase of the solicitation. That's the silent phase. You wait for an answer. Now, I've done thousands of these solicitations. What's the answer I get? What is the answer I get? They say, well, we'll think about that, or we'll pray about that, or I need to talk to my spouse about it. And I'll say, that's fine. I'll say, when I come back after that, after they make that statement, I let them say something. And then I come back and say, remember this, any amount you give is going to be appreciated. Any amount you give is going to be appreciated. That's another point that I make that takes pressure off of people. Now, I'm going to come back to this in just a minute. But step number 5 is the follow-up. And I would say, John and Mary, I've got a proposal. And that's when I hand them the proposal. And I say, John and Mary, I'd like to follow up with you in a week to 10 days. 99.9% of people say yes, that's fine. What happens though, let me go back again. What happens in number 4, when you make the ask, and someone says, well, we weren't thinking about that much. We had talked about it beforehand, and we were thinking more about 25. Now I'm going to say, they said 25. Now I'm going to say, John and Mary, do you feel comfortable signing a pledge card for that amount today? What am I trying to do? I'm trying to close, right? Close, the big C, close. So if they tell me they're comfortable in signing a pledge card for $25,000, I'm going to try to get it closed. And I have my pledge card in my pocket, just like you should be. You should always carry your pledge card with you. And I have my pledge card, I'm ready. Do you feel comfortable signing a pledge card for that amount today? And what I found is 50% say yes, 50% say no. If they say yes, then I'm pulling my pledge card out and I'm making that ask. Remember, I talked about that example where I had the gentleman that I asked for, went through my 5 steps, got there, and we asked him for $250,000. And he said to me, Jerry, how many people have given $250,000 to this campaign? And I said, all the co-chairs. There were 4 co-chairs. He was one of them. The other 3 co-chairs had given 250 or more. That's what I said. He said to me, okay, I'm going to do the 250, but I'm going to do more. Now, I'm sitting there and you're sitting in my place. What would you say? Remember, we went through this. So what would you say? I ask this question every time I do a seminar, and you wouldn't believe the responses I get when I ask that question. You wouldn't believe the responses I get. It's pretty simple. It's pretty simple. I said, how much more? right? How much more? He said $1 million. I said, what? What do you think I said next? I said, you feel comfortable signing a pledge card for that amount today? He smiled. He said, yes. I pulled up my pledge card, got him to sign a pledge card for $1 million. Within an hour, I walked out of there with a $1 million pledge. One of the things you have to do when you're doing this by yourself and you don't have someone to tell the story, you have to take a break in between those points. Small talk, then you catch your breath a little bit and then go to step number 2. Same thing with 3 and 4. You don't rush through those. You don't keep talking over yourself. Tell the story, take a breath. I'm not saying a minute, but I'm saying, 10 seconds or 5 seconds or whatever. And then you start into your next point. Okay. 5 steps are very important. They're very important. And it's worked extremely well for every client I've worked with. And I would encourage you to follow those 5 steps and come up with whatever you're going to say. I know what I'm going to say in every one of those steps. I know what I'm going to say. You need to know what you're going to say in every one of those steps. So you're not making it up as you go along. And again, if you don't like what I'm saying, and I've given you my confidence cards, and you can have those and learn from those, or you make up your own. I don't care. Okay. 12 things to remember about athletic fundraising. I always have to include this in the end because if people ask me, what about athletic fundraising, Jerry? Is it different? Yes, athletic fundraising is different. And I always like to mention these 12 points. And I'll start by tell athletic development officers that you sell athletic projects like you would sell projects. And if it's a college, the people in the College of Business or in the School of Engineering, they're selling the business at the school, or they're selling the engineering school. You need to sell the athletic projects that way also. But most athletic people don't do that. They don't do that. You know what they do? They sell tickets. And tickets is not fundraising. That is not fundraising. Hey, John, you give me $50,000, I'll sell you 4 tickets on the 50-yard line. That's not fundraising. Naming opportunities seem to be more important to athletic donors than the average donor. So again, with naming opportunities, when you're talking to athletic donors, you might be inclined to mention that to them. How would you do that? You're out there talking to someone and you're talking about the projects, and you could certainly say, in recognition of a gift to this athletic campaign, would a naming opportunity be important to you and your family? Maybe. I remember doing a campaign for a school up in North Carolina. And so we called on this son. We couldn't get to the father. The father owned the company and the son was the VP. So we talked to the son, and we were building a new gym for the school. And so the son said, yeah, well, we got in. He actually brought it up about naming opportunity. He said, yeah, we'd be interested in looking at naming opportunity. So I had the school do a drawing, got the architect to do a drawing of the gym, and we had his name put on that drawing. And we went back to see him, and we presented that to him, and he was very impressed, very impressed. He said, well, let me talk to my father about this. Well, the first mistake we made was not talking to the father. We didn't talk to the decision maker. We talked to him. And the end of the story was, this fellow said, no, we're not doing that. And the son said to us, can I keep this drawing that you presented to me? He wanted to have his name on that building, even if he, didn't really have his name on the building. Remember I talked about too, that we were doing a hospital and we went in and talked to this couple about $1 million gift, and we never could get them to even acknowledge that this was important. But I had a drawing made up of the lobby, and I had their names printed on the drawing of the lobby and where it would be in the lobby. We showed them that, and you could see the difference in their acknowledgement and their recognition of the project when they saw their names there. And they did the $1 million after that. So naming opportunity is important, but showing them a picture of what their name looks like is probably more important. Number 4, coaches and athletic directors are more important than recognition gifts. In other words, they don't want those little trinkets. They want, calls from the coaches, call from the athletic director, somebody of importance. They want to know what's going on so that they can say to their peers, hey, let me tell you what, I was talking to the athletic director. The quality of professionalism in athletic fundraisers has improved greatly over the last 10 years. Athletic fundraisers used to be former coaches that retired from coaching and they moved into fundraisers. And I've seen very, very few of those people that have succeeded in fundraising that were former coaches. There's exceptions to that, and I can tell you about one exception who's done a great job, but I'm not going to get in there. Former athletes are not big givers. Former athletes are not givers, period. They don't give. Now, tell me why. I don't know why they don't give, but they never give. And especially professional athletes. First of all, you got to go through their agents, and agents are not going to let you get to them. And so I think that what you've got to do is you got to start cultivating former athletes in school when they're there. Have a meeting with all the former athletes, especially universities. Call all your athletes together. Talk about here's what we've been able to accomplish. Why the 4 years you've been in school, and some of our facilities and scholarships or whatever it may be, and it's a result of people that have given to this university. And so you're letting them know that people have done this, and you are benefiting from what they have done. So you're trying to plant a seed here, and we've seen schools do this, and we found that they get better return on gifts from former athletes. Okay, coaches should be sending newsletters to former athletes 3 times a year. Just a short 1-page newsletter, but again, it's trying to create that interest, let them know what's going on. They graduate, and then you never hear from anybody. All the thing they know is what they read in the paper. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not so good. But coaches should take time to do that. You should move. This is more for universities. Your ticket party donors, people who make. What I'm talking about there is, at universities you have to pay $100 to be able to buy a seat. That's a ticket. That's a priority. But you pay $100 to buy a seat, and the seat costs X, whatever. So what happens though is that a lot of universities don't move those ticket priority donors to their major gift donors. And I would say that those are sometimes, especially people that have financial capability and been with you at least 10 years, should be major donors to you. And a lot of those athletic people overlook that. Could you just solicitate donors regardless of the type of season you're having? If you're 0-10 or 0-12 or whatever, you should still continue to solicit people and say, we were 0-10 this year, but with your support, we think we can change that and move forward. You take a negative and turn it into a positive. Okay, it's important to have either the athletic director or the head coach with the development officer when you're making a leadership solicitation. So that's important. You're taking who? You're taking the decision maker. Okay. And number 12, your athletic solicitation success rate. Remember I mentioned this earlier. Overall, your athletic solicitation success rate increases with the number of preliminary cultivation meetings you have prior to making the ask. So we talked about that. All right, I got a couple of questions here. Let's see what you have. Okay, Sam wants to know, have you ever had someone provide an amount, but when you asked them to sign a pledge card, they said no? What did you do? Yeah, for instance, if you're out there and you ask someone for, if you ask them for an X number of dollars and they say yes, I think I said this before. If they say yes, then I ask them to sign a pledge card. Then they give me someone said no, I can't do that right now, and we'll think about it. And I'm not sure, Sam, if that's what you're asking. Has anyone ever provided you an amount? But then when you ask them to sign a pledge card, they said no. Not really. I can't think of a situation specifically that have said that. Other than people have said, I don't sign pledge cards, and that could be what you're talking about, where you ask someone, ask them for a gift, and would you be willing to sign a pledge card? And they said no, I don't sign pledge cards. My word is my bond. Well, their word may be their bond, but we can't count it unless we have a signed pledge card. And then that's where you have to come in with a response. You have to be able to say, John, I appreciate your comment, but our accountants and our board don't use you, use your accountants, use your board as a reason we can't count it unless we have a signed pledge card. Now, some people will say, well, even if they sent you an email committing to that amount of what you asked them for, you can count that. Anything in writing we can count. I remember one time we did a solicitation with a gentleman. We were at a McDonald's. This is a big highfalutin, meeting we had, and the gentleman committed to $3 million, and this was years and years ago, and we didn't have a pledge card. We got him to sign a napkin. We wrote it out on a napkin and he signed the napkin. We put the napkin in our file. Now, I'll tell you another story. This may be off of what you're saying. This is not what you asked for, but I remember making a presentation to a president of a university, and he and his wife, and he agreed to do what I asked for. And I said, do you feel comfortable signing a pledge card? And he said, yes. I reached in my pocket to get my pledge card, and I didn't have a pledge card. I failed to put a pledge card in my pocket. So what did I do? I tore off a piece of paper, wrote it out, and had he and his wife sign. He got the biggest kick out of that. He thought that was so funny that I did that. Anyway, Sam, I'm not sure if I answered your question, but I'd be glad to talk to you more about that offline if you want to. Okay, here's from Tim. How is it best to do an online solicitation when they are in another area of the country? We have a proposal digitally, but I didn't print it since it's going to be online. I think that's difficult, but I think that you have the proposal with you when you're making the presentation online, or a Zoom call or whatever you're doing. But immediately after that, you tell them, I'm sending you a written proposal, which outlines what I just asked for. That's about the only way you can handle that. All right. So I appreciate all of you been on these 6 sessions. I tape them all. They're all recorded. And I would say, you can certainly get a copy of the recording and look at it again. I had one gentleman tell me that he said, I've done this twice. I've gone through the 6 sessions twice, but he said, I come away with 2 pages of written notes. Now, I think I say a lot of the same things over and over, but maybe I don't. But I could easily just give you the recording, and I don't do that. Every one of these I do live. So again, we're going to start another investment training in August the 8th. We'll do 6 of those. If you want to sign up for them again, you're certainly welcome to. You get what you pay for, and you're not paying anything. And any friends you have that you might want to give them this information, let them send an email to Maria and get them signed up. We will send you a certificate of completion of this course. If you've done at least 4 of the 6 sessions, we'll send you a completion. If you go back and look at the other ones that you missed, and then let us know that you watched those, we'll still send you a certificate. It's something you can frame, something you put on the wall. Just says you've completed the J.F. Smith Group fundraising sessions. So anyway, thank you all for attending, and I appreciate your participation. And I'm available anytime you need to send me an email or even give me a call. I'll be glad to respond to some of your questions or some of your comments. So thank you very much. Have a great day and a great week, and the best to you in your fundraising endeavors. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jerry. Good session.
Thank you.